The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Bangko Sentral says it is ready to raise interest rates to prevent further broadening of price pressures. The central bank made the statement after inflation was revealed to have picked up to 5.3% in August. The BSP says an interest rate hike would also prevent the emergence of additional second-order effects, given the persistent upside risks to the inflation outlook. The BSP adds that it will continue to support non-monetary government measures to mitigate the impact of supply-side pressures. Despite the uptick, the Bangko Sentral remains confident that inflation will slow down and will still fall within its 2 to 4% target for the year. The National Economic and Development Authority is considering a temporary reduction in rice tariffs as a measure to lower domestic prices. This is in response to the fact that the quickening of August inflation to 5.3% is primarily driven by increase in prices of the staple and fuel. NEDA sees the tariff cut as a way to partially offset the increase in global prices, as well as mitigate its impact on consumers and households. Another measure to address rising prices of the staple is the 41 and 45 peso cap on rice prices, which took effect on Tuesday. Vendors, though, are finding it hard to comply with this price ceiling, noting that they have yet to find suppliers that would sell to them at lower prices. One group says retailers stand to lose up to 5 pesos per kilo with the price ceiling. The Grains Retailers Confederation of the Philippines, or GRECON, says retailers need to sell rice at 50 pesos per kilo to break even. If retailers sell an average of 20 bags of rice a day at 250 pesos a sack, they would lose 5,000 pesos per day. The group says it plans on meeting with the concerned agencies and President Bongbong Marcos to give their recommendations in controlling rice prices.
Yung assurance lang na mayroong tulong yung ating gobyerno, hindi ko masasabi kung sapat. At least mayroon tayong maibigay na tulong sa mga retailers. Alam ko itong price cap na ito, band-aid solution lang ito. Temporary lang ito. Pero ang importante, tingnan natin yung pananaw sa long range na kailangan natin yung long-term solution dito sa agricultural sector nito.
Here to share with us her insights on the rice price ceiling and NEDA's plan to temporarily cut tariffs, we have with us on the show China Banking Corporation's Chief Economist, Domini Velasquez. Good morning, Domini. Thank you very much for joining us again this morning on One News.
Good morning, Diego. Thank you for inviting me again.
Yes, let's get right to it. Let's talk about the price cap first. You earlier warned of supply shortages because of this. Can you explain or elaborate on that?
Well, yes. What will happen is that when you actually set your price below the effective market price, the market price is where the buyers and the sellers meet. If we look at Economics 101, it's where the buyers and sellers meet, where buyers are willing to sell and sellers are willing to buy. But if that's below that, you'll have more demand than supply. Sellers will not want to sell at 41 or 45, right? And then buyers will buy more of this rice because it's cheaper. And that will eventually lead to shortages unless you do something about it. Like I think it was mentioned that I think the DA or the government is planning to subsidize this sort of discrepancy that retailers will actually be able to afford to sell rice at lower prices until at least the harvest season.
Yes, and now NEDA is eyeing temporary cuts in rice tariffs. Do you think this will help cushion the impact of the price caps? And how do you think this will affect local farmers, though?
I think should be helpful and should be something that could have been, explored ahead of time. We do have this rice tariffication law. They can actually adjust tariffs of rice. So if you look at the first year the rice tariffication law was implemented around 2021, I think there was a windfall of around 20 billion pesos from this shift. So it actually you can actually just shift this instead of just using it as a subsidy. You'll just make sure that tariffs are lower.
Yeah.
You let go of this income in the meantime, so that it will benefit consumers and it will not distort the market price.
And speaking of inflation, we have it accelerating to 5.3% in August. First in 7 months. Was this expected?
For us, a little bit, largely because around
Mm,
July, we were already seeing an increase in rice prices, in vegetable prices. Vegetable prices largely because of, those typhoons we had
mhm.
since July, Egay, and now we do have continuous typhoons with Ineng and hitting some of the regions that are actually vegetable and rice
Yes.
producers in the north. For rice prices, we did see a little bit of an uptick, not just because of the typhoons, but because, rice prices in globally is also increasing with the export ban in India.
That's right.
So there is a little bit of expectation. We do think inflation will continue to trend down after this. There was really just an uptick because, vegetable prices actually increased by
Yes.
30% last month.
And the VSP is now prepared to raise the rates. Is this a good move considering that our GDP has slowed down to 4.3% in the second quarter?
We think the cumulative 425 basis points is enough already. We've seen GDP slow down. We also think that some of the pressures that we experienced last August was largely supply side
Hmm.
and could be addressed by other means, not really hiking interest rates yet again. We do think though the BSP will stand pat, but they'll
Okay.
always be hawkish so as to support the view that the inflation is really going down, or they're going to step in when they see some upside risks. It also supports your foreign exchange, your peso, if BSP is more hawkish.
And what are your inflation and growth projections for the rest of the year, taking into account all that we mentioned a while ago from food supply issues, the current price cap, the typhoon, and of course, El Nino?
We think inflation is going to trend down, though still a little bit elevated. So maybe for the end of the year,
Okay.
5.8%. We still agree with BSP that the inflation will trend down towards their target, maybe around November. Before, our forecast was October. One of the key risks that we saw this morning was really a production cut in oil prices from
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia and Russia. So that's going to be a risk moving forward. In terms of growth, we think there's still some slowdown just because, we were really out of this revenge spending. We do have higher borrowing
Yes.
costs. So around 5.2% for full year, maybe around 5.5% for the next 2 quarters.
Once again, very interesting insights, but that's all the time we have for now. But thank you for joining us, China Bank Chief Economist Domini Velasquez.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. One News Now, I'm Jago Castro. President Bongbong Marcos is aiming to attract more investments at the 43rd ASEAN Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia. According to House Speaker Martin Romualdez, the summit provides an excellent venue to showcase the advantages that the Philippines has as a trade and investment hub. Apart from the summit itself, ASEAN will also hold dialogues with the United States, Canada, Japan, South Korea, and the United Nations. The ASEAN-China Summit started earlier today, followed by the summit with South Korea. Up next will be dialogues with other nations and the UN, after which the heads of state will be attending a gala dinner hosted by Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Aside from those, Marcos is also expected to hold bilateral meetings with other state leaders in the sidelines of the summit to promote national interests. In corporate news, Ayala Land Incorporated welcomes its first female president and CEO, Ana Maria Margarita or Mi-An-D. The appointment takes into effect on October 1. Mi-An-D will replace Bernard Vincent D., who retired after being with the company for 26 years, 9 of which as president and CEO. In a letter sent to employees, Chairman Jaime Augusto Zobel de Ayala expressed his trust and confidence in the newly appointed president. This just crossing our wires. The Philippine Infradev Holdings says the $3.5 billion Makati subway project alignment, quote, will no longer be feasible. This follows the Supreme Court ruling that placed some areas in Makati City under the jurisdiction of Taguig. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Jago Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.